Today is the last day of April and I'm starting to think about my May reading, especially my reading for Wyrd and Wonder. I'm going to be on holiday for a couple of days at the very start of May, so I've had to think about what I'm taking with me. That means for the books in this vlog, you might not get as many check-ins midpoint as I would usually like to do, but maybe in place of that you'll get some b-roll or some holiday snapshots. I talked about my plans for Wyrd and Wonder in my TBR game video that I posted last month. It's the 2-player version with Annie from the Owlbear. I explained that Wyrd and Wonder is a month-long fantasy-based reading, watching, playing event, but very, very low stakes. There are no real prompts, no teams, no points. It's very come as you are, have a good time. I'll link to at least one of the host's announcement posts in the description. This year's theme is Celestial and Transformation, so we're encouraged to be picking up books that feature shifters, transformations, moons on the cover, in the title, in the theming, anything and everything goes. I came up with 3 books that I thought fit the prompts fairly well, but I am now thinking I'm going to change that a little bit. So the 2 that I'm sticking with are the Sumage Solution. This is the first book in Gail Carriger's The San Andreas Shifters books. I've read Gail Carriger before. I really like her Parasol Protectorate universe, so I think this one could be a lot of fun. Then I have Nemesis Mine by Amy Archer. This is a new release with a moon on the cover. It's an enemies to lovers fake dating, which sounds exactly up my alley. And then I was going to read Betrothed to the Emperor by Kai Butler, which again I think is a political arranged marriage fantasy, very much my scene. I thought this was a moon on the cover, but the more I look at it, the more I'm starting to think it's a sun. Let me know what you think either way, but for now I'm going to shift it off the TBR and put in 2 different books. I'm adding in Between a Roquefort and a Hard Place by Reilly. This is the 7th book in the Grilled Cheese Mysteries. It has a moon on the cover and I know I love this series. It's probably going to be, I think it's going to be a good book for travelling because I'll be able to dip in and out really easily. Finally, there's the Moonsingers by Robyn J. Pritzker. This has moon in the title, a moon on the cover. It is a cozy fantasy. Again, it just sounds like something that would be really good for when I'm on the go and maybe don't want a hugely complex political plot to keep track of. Either I'll be checking in with you as I go, or I'll film some reviews when I get back and intersperse it with some travel snapshots. Either way, I hope you'll enjoy hearing about the books. So I'm back and I had a great holiday. I had a great vacation. I got some sun, which was unusual but appreciated, and I did make a start on my reading. First book I'm going to mention is The Sumage Solution, and we're not quite there yet. I was planning on reading that as my audiobook, but the narrator I think is fine. I think the narrator is fine. I don't think that's the problem. The problem is a production issue, I guess. Whenever the character is having a kind of internal thought, the sort of thing that you'd get in italics in the book, the audiobook does this strange, echoey, distant voice in a tin can effect, and I got, I think, about 3 paragraphs in, maybe a couple of pages worth of listening, and I could not. I could not. It's the most annoying thing. It's not happening. So I won't be listening to that as an audiobook. I will be picking it up as an ebook, but that means that I've moved it to the back of the list. I do have some more positive updates though. The first book that I picked up was Nemesis Mine by Amy Archer. This is a book that is releasing now. It's releasing June 9th. So it'll be coming around about the same time as this vlog. We have a villain and a hero, and they decide to team up to get them both some good or bad publicity. The hero wants to look like they are tackling villainous forces because there's an upcoming election and they want to win the spot of hero of their city for the 15th year. The villain is he's not completely a villain. I mean, he is completely a villain, but he's also more just like a scamp. Like his villainy stuff is a bit, you know, he draws things on posters. He breaks wine bottles. He's not a real bad guy, but he is a villain in this world, and he gets respect and kind of gifts given to him because his village fear him so much. But they're starting to think he's maybe not as impressive as he wants to be. He's been riding the coattails of a accidental past glory, and he wants to look worse than he is. So the two of them team up to kind of do this publicity stunt, and while that's happening, obviously they fall for each other. I had some interesting thoughts on this one. So the blurb is that it's a funny, steamy, big-hearted rom-com set in a cozy fantasy world featuring an irreverent take on a fantasy kingdom for fans of Shrek and the Princess Bride. I do think we get that kind of comedy, fantasy, village, country very well, but I'll talk about that in a second. Enemies to reluctant allies to lovers. A twist on the fake hating / fake dating. Black cat golden retriever energy. Dagger to the throat moments. Falling for the villain, touch him and you die. I would say all of this was in the book. If you think you're gonna like it, you probably will. Some of my thoughts though, I was completely sold on the book in the first paragraph. I really loved the writing style. I loved the snarky tone to it. The world building I found interesting. We have like a governing organisation for heroes, an academy for villains. Both have to stick to their rules. It does, now I think on it, have that Shrek kind of feel to it. I don't know that I love that. I kept thinking that what I really want, because I've read a few of these, the villain is the hero or the protagonist stories recently, and of course they're not as bad as we really think. We've had a few of them recently, and I tend to like that storyline. But what I kind of always want is for the villain to be truly villainous. In this, Amy Archer is definitely playing with that idea of the world not being as black and white as we, the characters, think it is. Maximilian, our hero, does have his darker sides, his darker impulses. He's not as perfect as the world thinks he is, and similarly Cyrus isn't quite as bad as everyone thinks he is. And they do think he's awful, but he is doing things. Like I said, he's maybe breaking wine bottles at a winery opening, he's burning all the bakery's bread. Occasionally he accidentally burns down the bakery as well, but like it's not necessarily, he's more like a funny little guy. He's playing pranks almost. And I just kind of think I would love a story where the hero and the villain that fall for each other are truly, like, the villain is truly villainous and we're corrupting that hero's moral code in some way. But then I also don't think that would be the book that I think it would be. That's more like just a really dark romance, and I don't like those either. What I think I want from this book, if it had done, I would have liked it less. Does that make sense? I don't think it makes sense, but that's where I'm kind of coming down. I wanted Cyrus to be more truly the bad guy, so there would be more reluctance. It would feel more like we were pulling Maximilian more away from his morals, but I also wouldn't have actually liked if, because then I'd be like, oh no, I don't want him to end up with that truly, truly awful person. So I don't know where that goes. Like if this kind of real rivals or enemies to lovers was played straight, not with the comedy aspect, then that's just a dark and or abusive romance, isn't it? The covers on this are really interesting because we have two very different covers. I might be about to get these the wrong way round, but I think the cover that I first saw, this one, is the US cover, I think. And then I think this cover is the UK cover. And it's really interesting because this is very much like, you know, the internet meme about two cakes, where my cake isn't as good as this other person's cake, but anyone looking at them is just like, oh my god, two cakes. The covers are very much the two cake scenario. If I had only ever seen the British cover, I would have thought it's gorgeous, it's cutesy, it's fun, I love it. And it actually, interestingly enough, I think gives you a better sense of the tone of the book. I think it conveys more of that slightly Princess Bridey feel, that Shrek feel. It has more of the type of humour you're going to get in it. I think this is the more accurate cover. However, the American cover is the cover I prefer because it's beautiful. This is the one I like best, but I don't think it as accurately conveys what is inside the book. This one I think feels more like something serious, which again, as I said, if we took this seriously, it would become a different type of story. But I think this felt more like the book I wanted and the book I thought I was getting, but actually the British one is what it is and probably what I prefer if I was given the two things. I don't know what I'm saying, but basically just Amy Archer made the right choice. I would have asked for something different, but she was right, she knew what she was doing. Making it darker wouldn't have worked, making it more serious wouldn't have worked, but this cover fits that better. They're both gorgeous covers, they're both stunning covers. Either one would be a winner, but I do sort of prefer the first one. I did have a couple of issues with the characters along the way. Now,
quick edit, Cyrus is the villain.
So when I say he's not likeable, or I want him not to be likeable. We've already said that. I want him more unlikable. But also I want that unlikability turned outwards. The terrible things he does, which they're not that terrible, but even if they were terrible, I want the bad guy things he does to happen to people, not necessarily that deserve it. I want them to happen to, yes, either the little shitty villagers that kind of got what they had coming, or I want it to happen to like generic villager number 5, people that as a reader we have no connection to. I'm happy to see him burn someone's house down if I don't know the person, if it's done in a humorous way. That's fine. My issue with this was once Max and Cyrus got together and they started to bond, they formed this little Mean Girls clique that like turned sideways. Turning that like meanness and viciousness internally would also have been really juicy and fun. Like that would have been really angsty. But what they do is they kind of turn it sideways and target Balthazar, who is Max's kind of personal secretary. He's very clearly been in love with Max for years, would do anything for him, viciously dislikes Cyrus. And Cyrus and Max kind of are just like bitchy to Balthazar all the time, even when he's trying. I didn't like it. I felt it was obvious what we were setting up. It didn't make me fond of the characters. I would have preferred to see more awful things, but I didn't want them to happen to people that I feel like our characters should have been, not protecting, but like they're part of their circle. I want it to be our characters, the characters we're seeing, against the world, not them turning on people that I feel it should be part of their inner circle. I don't know what I mean about this book. Everything's just me going, do you know what I mean? And I don't know what I mean. I did end up rating it 4 stars though. It is a really good story. If you actually go into it expecting the tone you're going to get, you'll have a great time with it. I was just a little bit on the back foot. It's probably one of the better books in this villain romance trope that I've read. For something that was a little bit easier to talk about, the next one I picked was another moon on the cover, and I went with Between a Roquefort and a Hard Place by Linda Reilly. This is the 7th book in her grilled cheese mystery series. In it we're following Carly. She runs a grilled cheese shop and of course is constantly stumbling over dead bodies. This was fantastic. I read this on the 4-hour flight from start to finish. I had a great time. Carly has been asked by this reclusive older woman in this big fancy house to go and make her a grilled cheese sandwich. There's a bit of setup, but essentially that. She has a live-in caterer and she has a niece. The house is being renovated and Ari, Carly's husband now, is involved in the renovation. The head renovator? Contractor. The head guy and Ari have a bit of a disagreement. Ari has noticed some discrepancies. There's something the contractor and the niece might be up to, and then the contractor falls off the roof. And so Ari is the prime suspect and Carly obviously has to clear her man's name. We had a little bit of a historical mystery happening here, a cold case mystery, and we had that really nicely sort of contained pool of suspects. Even though Carly's going out and about, it's not a locked room or anything, but it just felt like it felt a very neatly packed mystery. As always with this series, I came out starving and wanting cheese, which at 11:30 at night was not the best solution, but I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. This, maybe a 4.5, is definitely up there. The final book that I started on vacation, didn't finish, is The Moonsingers by Robyn J. Pritzker. I am currently just under halfway through. This is a cozy fantasy. It's actually got the subtitle A Cozy Fairy Tale, and it definitely is. I am really enjoying it. I'm really interested in what's going to happen, but it is very slow paced. In a quiet glen beyond the reaches of the railway lives a peculiar family who knows the best magic is the kind found in ordinary moments. When Ismay Gayapart is dismissed from yet another teaching position after an unfortunate accident, she accepts a last chance job as a private tutor in sleepy Glen Maidens village. The town is brimming with natural beauty, uncanny traditions and earnest locals, none more unusual than her 3 young pupils, the Underhill sisters, and their puzzling father. Determined to make herself useful after several catastrophic lessons with the unbiddable girls, Ismay writes to the Transport Bureau suggesting an extension to the train line, hoping to bring Glen Maidens into modernity. As usual, Ismay's good intentions lead to chaos with the arrival of the Bureau's frustratingly thorough officer, Hamish Breck, whose railway plans threaten not only the Glen's tranquility, but also the ancient oak at its heart. Amidst a mess of her own making, Ismay unearths Glen Maiden's enchanted secret. The Underhills, like many villagers, are fairies who settled in the mortal realm in search of a gentler life, and the oak is their only bridge back to the moonlit realm of the fantastic. As the summer heat rises, Ismay schemes with her magical neighbours to prevent the extension, each day finding herself more entangled with the charming, persistent bureaucrat. With her newfound family, the way between the worlds, and her heart all at risk, Ismay must decide how much she would bargain to finally embrace the wonder and belonging she's always wished for. I'm saying cozy fantasy, but I'm actually wondering if I should be using Faye from Books and Chocoholics terminology, where she talks about gentle fantasy rather than cozy fantasy, because yeah, they're saying it's cozy, and the setting is a small rural village. It's in the middle of the countryside. It's very quiet, very cozy, very calm, very pastoral, but there are fairly high stakes. For our protagonist, Ismay, she is a schoolmistress who, due to something in her past that I don't know about yet, she has come to this position looking after Dermot's 3 young children without a reference. Which is fine, because Dermot doesn't seem to know what a reference is, so it works out for her. But this is kind of like her last chance, almost. And someone in the village knows there's a lot of stakes for her in terms of her career, in terms of, I guess, this kind of vague time period we're in. Essentially her freedom, because she really needs to make this position work. And then there's the bigger plot going on, which is about the Fae and their involvement in this village, where there is a big tree, which how they kind of move between the worlds, and due to maybe an accidental letter that Ismay sent, a surveyor is now here potentially building a railway track through the town and through the tree. And if that happens, it's not great for Dermot or the 3 girls. So the stakes are pretty high. So I am enjoying it. I do find it interesting that the setup is Ismay has taken the position as the tutor for the 3 girls, and they are being privately tutored because they are unbiddable. They can't be in the school because they're fairies. Essentially, they won't sit still during lessons. They want to be outside. They are only interested in learning about what they're interested in learning about. And I'm just like, these girls have ADHD. Yes, the schoolmaster in the village doesn't like them, doesn't like Ismay by kind of connection, but we're set up in the story at the beginning that like these girls are so strange, the whole village thinks they're weird, you're out on the outskirts, oh, you're taking a job with them. And I'm like, I can see why the schoolmaster's like, oh my god, these kids. But the rest of the village, yeah, they're unbiddable, but like they're not. I almost want them to be weirder. I want them to be weirder, and not just that they want to have their lessons outdoors. I want there to be a reason that the whole village is like, oh, especially considering the fact apparently they're not the only fairies in the village, so why are they so strange? That's where I am at the moment. It might just be I'm over reading it, I'm over analysing it. Ismay seems to be now where I am. She has found her footing with the girls. They're all having a good time, but obviously this train situation has popped up, which I'm now interested, because I thought we were doing a little bit of a Jane Eyre where Ismay is going to fall for her slightly, I don't want to say he's neglectful, but he kind of does only pop up very rarely. Dermot, the
girl's father. I thought we were going to go down a kind of governess employer route, but now I'm thinking Hamish, the train surveyor guy, is actually going to be the love interest. So I'm interested and intrigued, but it is it's slower paced than I would have liked. It does have, when it talks about the summer heat, that definitely feels like the vibe, you know, there's that kind of sun beating down on you out in the countryside, surrounded by the hedgerows, the birds chirping. That feeling comes through so strongly in the narrative, both in the story and the setting, but also just the pacing. All of it has that kind of lazy summer feel to it, which obviously it's coming out in July, so that's perfect. But that's a real feeling I get from the book, that almost oppressive heat. I don't want to do anything, I want to laze about all day feeling comes through really strongly. And that's just, it's a little slower than I would have liked. But I am interested. It's just taken a little longer than I wanted, and I'm having to break it up a little more than I maybe planned to.
Couple of updates for you. The first one is that I finished The Moonsingers. I had a great time with this book. I probably should have said at the beginning, because I think it's probably the most applicable thing for me as a reviewer to talk about, is that yes, it's a cozy fantasy romance. I know that I said it was quite slow paced, and it was, but I do still think that that slow pacing is because it's a cozy fantasy. It's doing what it's trying to do. And I think by the end I gave it a 4 or a 4.5. But more importantly for this, to give you something a little bit different, is that this is a pseudo-Scottish historical setting. If you've watched more than a few of my videos in the past, you probably already know that I have had some bad luck with books that are set in Scotland. Whether they are fantastical Scotland, or they are historical or contemporary, I usually don't get on well with books set here because most of them are still written by people that don't live here, and they end up being this magical fairy world. Oftentimes conflate Scotland and Ireland, cultures, languages, habits, or they even add in Wales and just make it a kind of generic magical fairy Celt land, and it's really irritating. And that's assuming they're not getting the actual details wrong, just the vibe. I actually think I might have mentioned something similar in my TBR video for the Amazing Readathon that came out at the end of last month, because I was planning on reading a book by an American author set in Scotland, and I was like, I have a backup just in case. This one, chef's kiss. Our story is set in the village of Glenmaidens, and it gives me the vibe of, without being the same as, Brigadoon. Brigadoon is a movie from the 1950s. It's very golden age Hollywood musical singing and dancing. It's about a magical Scottish village called Brigadoon that only appears once every 100 years. An American tourist stumbles his way into Brigadoon while it's there, falls in love with one of the girls, and has to decide whether he's going to stay in this kind of idyllic valley or whether he's going to go back to the real world. That's not what's happening here, but it does have that idealistic, beautiful village pastoral feel to it that's almost like something out of a fairy tale. And then we have our kind of slightly more jaded, slightly more world-weary, worn down protagonists coming in from the outside and having to work to save this town, to protect it so that they can stay there. So it's not the same, but there is a kind of element that I think if you like one, you'll probably like the other. What I loved about this book as well, the general vibe just felt right. It did feel more kind of like the north of Scotland rather than the central belt where I am. The arc that I read, so I'm assuming all the ebooks, had lots of little footnotes for how to pronounce characters' names. Personally, what I felt gave it the most feel of being fantasy, historical Scotland, was the language choices. So we talk about things like reels for dances, or a piece for a sandwich, or neeps and ties. Just in the characters' very casual language, they weren't going, this is what we call a this. It was just worked into the conversation the way that it would be, and it grounded it so well. It made it feel so of a place, and I really like that the author had that nice compromise. She didn't explain what things were in the story, which some people do. I know that other countries get the same, and then it very much feels like you are being introduced to this country as a tourist, and rather than being immersed in the world. And I don't particularly like it when it's countries I'm visiting, but it really irks me when it's a country I know really well. Instead of doing that, she just had little footnotes, and if you wanted to click on them you could, and it gave you what that word meant. So like I said, there were words for actual things, like sandwiches and dances. There were also kind of phrases that just come up in conversation, hold your wisht or something minded me. It really did feel like someone who's immersed in the country that they're telling their story from. And then when I got to the author's notes at the end and found out that the author had been living in Edinburgh for years, and she'd done the work. She clearly has built up a lot of local knowledge. She managed to get that kind of Scottish feeling in it without it all being kilts and bagpipes and really out of context accents. And I think if you're looking for something set in Scotland, this is a fantastic cozy fantasy with an important romantic plotline. I then went back and picked up the Sumage solution. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm not entirely certain that that's how we're pronouncing it, but that's what I'm going to be calling it. This time I'm just reading it on my Kindle, much better. I did originally think it was actually going to have to DNF that too. The opening, I want to say like 2 pages. The first few paragraphs were just, I must have read them about 5 times. There were a lot of names to get your head around. There were a lot of things going on, lots of words that are used in this world that I was struggling to really feel like I understood what was happening. But I'm now, I want to say about 10% in, and I'm much more settled. I am having a good time. Do I think it's going to live up to my expectations from Gail Carriger's steampunk world? I don't know. I do find it a little bit strange that our protagonist, or one of our protagonists in this, is called Biff, and we do have a werewolf called Biffy in her Parasol Protectorate world. It's a little bit strange to have the 2 werewolves with the same name in the 2 different kind of universes. This is a contemporary paranormal setting. It's fine. It took me a little while to adjust to what I was expecting from that character. The book does start in Biff's point of view. He is the pack beta, and they have just moved to the area. His brother is the alpha, who actually has a merman as a mate. Their pack is quite unusual because of this dynamic apparently in this world. Biff is being sent as the pack's representative down to the local, I think it was called Derps office, which is like the registration point for all types of paranormal shifters. This was the section I really struggled with. We were in their house, there was the 7 different pack mates milling about, teasing each other, but I just was struggling to remember who was who. I think we should have started in the next scene, which is our second lead character, Max. The Sumage in the title, and bear with me because I'm going to explain it as I understand it, but the Sumages are people who would have been mages in this world, so they have magic, or did have magic, but they have somehow failed, or they're not as good, and so instead what they can do is kind of like deflect magical explosions or magical power outages or surges. So we're at the Derps office and a shifter is having a bit of a moment. Her partner's been cheating on her and she builds up all this energy, and Max is sent out so that when she blows, he gets hit with it, he transforms it into flowers, and it kind of just neutralizes, she calms down. So he's, I think, the Sumage in the equation, and I don't really understand what that is in this world yet. But obviously that's who Biff then talks to about getting his pack settled in the area, and there's an almost instant connection between them. I am enjoying it now that we're a little bit more further into the world. I still think it would have been better to start with that big scene with the explosion, with Max talking the kitsune down. I think that would just have been a nicer opening, rather than we have a little bit of a moment where it's like alarm bells, alarm bells, alarm bells, Max has to go, and then we jump to Biff and the pack talking about how they're going to go down to the office, or how Biff's going to get sent down to the office. I maybe would have taken off that first scene. I don't think it added anything, and then switched scenes 2 and 3. Would have, I think, started the book in a better way. I would have enjoyed it more. But I'm settled now, and it does feel like it's going to be quite a quick read. So since this is the last book of the vlog, the next update will probably be me telling you how I've got on all month. Finished up with the Sumage solution, and I ended up having a really good time with it. I do think that the world building is still a little unclear to me. I would have liked just maybe a little bit more explanation of these surges and sumages and plugs and everything to do with magecraft and how these magical abilities came about. I don't know, I just wanted a little bit more of a grounding in the world itself. It doesn't make a huge difference to the book as a whole though, because although there are some plot elements here, we have Biff and his pack trying to find a new home, we have Max and all his daddy issues, his issues around his own power or lack thereof, but by and large this is a romance, and although there is plot happening related to the shifters and the magic in the world, it is largely driven by Biff and Max's relationship. So to be honest, it didn't make a huge amount of difference for what the book was. I didn't enjoy this book as much as I've enjoyed some of Carriger's other works. I absolutely loved her original Parasol Protectorate series. I have rated Gail Carriger stuff 5 stars in the past. This one just didn't quite reach that for me. But I would be interested in continuing with the series. I'm not rushing out to pick it up, but if it comes across my path, it's an entertaining way to spend some time. I think the rest of the series, they are interconnected standalones following the different pack members and their relationships. So I think it would be one that I can dip in and out of as and when, rather than having to pick them up quickly so that I remember relevant plot points. I've had a really good time with my Wyrd and Wonder reading this month. I haven't really managed to fit in any of the video games or TV shows or movies that are completely optional because this is such a chill reading event, but I would maybe have liked to have fit something in. I don't know what it would have been, but I might have liked to watch maybe some Sailor Moon or try Teen Wolf. That one's completely new to me. Instead, I have been out and about. We have had some sun here actually. After I got back, weeks of rain, but now we're in the middle of a heat wave, which is about the low 20s, so not massively hot, but nice for going walks on. Next week we are predicted to be going back to actual freezing weather in June, so I've been trying to get as much outdoor vitamin D activity as I can, and I've been really hooked on Pokemon Go at the moment, so I haven't really been sitting down to watch a lot of TV, but I did have a great time with the books and I enjoyed my Wyrd and Wonder experience. I always do. I love how relaxed it is and how you can really build it into something that suits yourself. I'll leave a link to one of the hosts' announcement posts for the event, and if you're interested you can maybe join the Discord. The Discord does stay open year round and they run a slightly smaller secondary event in November for Sci-Fi Month, and you'd also then be there ready for any announcements that come out about next year's readathon. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any comments or thoughts on any of these books, if you're interested in trying any of them, or just leave me some kind of celestial emoji in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.